Have you ever watched someone hurt others and still seem to thrive? Have you questioned if justice even exists when liars walk free and manipulators post smiling selfies? Or have you ever wondered, what if karma doesn't make noise, but leaves echoes they can't silence? The truth is, the worst people often look like they're winning. But that's because life doesn't collect its debts in publicity, does it quietly, slowly, in private. Stoics never chase revenge. They don't lash out, scream, or beg for fairness. They observe. Because while you're healing in peace, karma is already moving and it never misses. You might think they got away with it. The betrayal, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the abandonment. They walked away with no apology, no shame, acting as if you were the villain in the story. But something did happen, and now life is speaking to them in the one language karma always uses: silence. No one hears it but them, and they feel it every single day. In this video, you'll discover 5 quiet, powerful signs that someone is already receiving the consequences of how they treated you, not on a public stage, not in some courtroom drama, but in the moments when no one is around, when they're left alone with their thoughts. This is not about revenge. This is about truth. And truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs stillness. Nothing weighs more than pretending to be okay when you're not. But karma isn't interested in appearances. It works through what people feel when there's no audience, no likes, no filters. The first sign karma is already doing its work: they start pretending they've never been better. The one who ghosted you, who shattered your trust, who discarded you like you never mattered, they suddenly look like they're glowing. They flood their feed with photos, laughing in places you two never went, surrounded by people who never mattered when they had you. They smile a little too wide. Their captions sound a little too perfect. And if you're not careful, you might fall for it. You might scroll and think, maybe they're genuinely happy without me. But here's the truth. Real happiness doesn't scream. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need to prove itself. Fake happiness, that's the one that begs for your attention. You've seen this before: the sudden flood of inspirational quotes, the curated selfies, the forced glow-up narrative. One day they're breaking something real. The next they're tagging number healing with someone new, like nothing ever happened. But look again. Look past the angles and filters. The energy's off. The smile doesn't reach the eyes. The desperation leaks through the polish, because happiness is calm, but insecurity, that's always loud. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. That's why a Stoic doesn't argue, doesn't clap back, doesn't refresh their stories for some imaginary closure. They observe, they heal, because real peace doesn't perform, it just exists. And the louder someone tries to convince the world they've moved on, the more likely they haven't. Karma doesn't knock on doors. It slips in when the lights are off, whispering truths they tried to escape. And every night when they close their eyes, they're not haunted by what they lost. They're haunted by who they became to lose it. And that's a pain no partner, no post, no fake smile can ever drown out. And that haunting realization we ended with, that they lost someone who truly cared, deepens in silence. Because here's the harsh truth. The most exhausting lie is faking peace. Karma doesn't always crash through the door like thunder. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it just takes. Slowly, methodically, It begins removing things they once held with careless hands. That's the second sign karma is quietly unfolding in someone's life, when life itself starts taking back what they never thought they'd lose. Most people expect karma to come with chaos, a dramatic breakup, a public downfall, a betrayal exposed. But that's not how karma really works. It doesn't scream, it doesn't storm in, it subtracts. At first, the losses are barely noticeable. A friend stops replying. A colleague withdraws trust. An opportunity slips through without warning. They chalk it up to bad luck, to life being unpredictable. They convince themselves it's just coincidence. But then it keeps happening, one setback after another. Slowly, the pattern emerges, and one day, they wake up in the wreckage of everything they once laughed at, ignored, or dismissed. Maybe they told you that you were too sensitive, too emotional, too reactive when in reality, you were the only one who ever showed up with heart. You stayed up texting them through their pain, offered forgiveness when they forgot your value, and believed in them even when they couldn't believe in themselves. And what did they do with that love? They mocked it. They labeled your loyalty as clinginess, your care as weakness, your presence as disposable. So, you stopped. You stopped offering your light to someone who only saw it as background noise. And without a scene, without revenge, without even closure, you walked away. At first, they felt unbothered, maybe even free. But over time, your absence began to echo. The texts slowed. Their inner circle thinned. The people they thought they could trust turned out to be mirrors of themselves, selfish, distant, transactional. And then the safety net they once took for granted? Gone. The comfort of being deeply understood? Missing. Because no one else could replicate the emotional space you held for them. Certainly not someone new. Someone who only knows the surface version they present while pretending they've healed. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one." And karma listens to that wisdom. It doesn't strike to punish it, strips away the illusions. It removes anything that no longer aligns with truth. And when someone mistreats a good person, they don't just lose you, they lose the part of themselves that once had access to real peace, patience, and compassion. Karma doesn't come for them with fire. It comes with clarity. And it makes sure they see, in the quiet moments, exactly what they threw away. Then it makes them sit with it. They might appear to have moved on, but inside, something essential is missing and they know it. Every room they enter feels just a little colder. Every new relationship feels a little more shallow, and even their victories don't taste as sweet. Why? Because deep down, in the quietest part of themselves, they realize they once held something real, something steady, kind, and sacred, and they let it slip right through their fingers. That's karma at work, not just in taking things away, but in stripping them of the version of themselves they were when they still had your love and your presence. And no matter how hard they try to rebuild it with someone else or recreate the same piece in a new place, it never feels the same again. That calm, that safety, that unique connection you once gave them it was one of a kind, and it's gone. The third sign that karma is already making its move is when you're still on their Mendivari day, in every thought, even if they try to pretend you're not. They won't say your name, not directly, not in public, but they'll talk around it, circle it, hint at it like a ghost they can't shake. You'll notice it in their social media, captions cryptic phrases about fake friends, betrayal, or rising from the ashes. Maybe they post a moody photo with a quote like, "Some people never knew what they had until it was gone," or "Not everyone deserves my loyalty." To the outside world, it looks like generic content, but you know better. You speak their language. You know how they express regret without ever admitting it out loud. Because once you knew how to read between the lines when they were breaking. And now those same lines are trying to reach you. The caption they wrote, it sounds like it was aimed at your soul. They didn't tag you. They didn't mention your name. But every single word pulls on a thread that ties right back to you. It's like they're hoping you'll notice, hoping you'll see it and respond, but they don't want to look like they care. That's not power. That's not healing. That's guilt. That's regret. That's their conscience speaking in riddles because their ego can't admit what their heart knows. They lost someone who truly saw them. And now the silence screams louder than any words ever could. Maybe their friends don't pick up on it. Maybe no one else sees the pattern. But you do. Because you once knew them in their rawest form, and you recognize the ache in their avoidance. That's how karma speaks. It doesn't always strike with force. Sometimes it strikes with obsession. It takes over their mind with thoughts they can't suppress, with memories they thought would fade but now cling to them like shadows. You, the one they dismissed, now live rent-free in their mental space. Not because you're haunting them, but because they created a mess they can't clean up. And a Stoic? A Stoic never replies with a subtweet or a cryptic quote. A Stoic doesn't try to match the noise, because to respond is to validate, but to remain silent? That is power reclaimed. Epictetus once said, "If someone speaks ill of you, live in such a way that no one will believe it. So let them talk behind your back, twist stories, drop lines in conversation that only make sense to you. You don't need to defend your name. You don't need to prove your version, because the more they talk in riddles, the more they reveal that you never really left their world, they just lost access to yours. Let them perform healing for the world to see. Let them write poetry for an audience they think includes you. But the real show? It's inside their head. And the mind, that's the loudest prison of all, especially when it's echoing with the name of the one they never meant to hurt. They tried to move on as if nothing was missing, but deep within, something vital was gone and they felt it. That absence echoed in every room they entered, a subtle chill that never quite left. Every new connection felt more shallow. Every win tasted less fulfilling. Why? Because somewhere in the quietest corners of their mind, they knew they once had something real, something rare, something that felt like home, and they let it slip away without realizing its worth until it was far beyond their reach. That's karma. Not just removing what they didn't value, but stripping away the version of themselves they were when they had your love, your loyalty, your presence. No matter how hard they try to rebuild with someone new, to mimic that sense of peace and safety with a replacement, it never fits the same. That warmth, that depth, that irreplaceable connection, it was once in their hands, and now it's just a memory they can't recreate. And deep down, they know they let go of something they'll never find again. The echoes of that loss haunt them in silence. And that's the true cost karma collects, not just through pain, but through longing, through regret, through the quiet knowing that what they had with you cannot be replicated, no matter how many new beginnings they chase. That brings us to the fourth sign. Karma is already speaking to them. You're still alive in their mind. You don't need to be in their life to dominate their thoughts. Even when they pretend you're invisible, they can't stop circling around your memory. They won't say your nomino directly, not aloud, but you'll hear yourself in the quotes they post, in the captions they write, in the conversations they start. You'll see vague statements about betrayal, trust, or rising from pain. Maybe they post a photo with words like, "Some people never realize what they had," or "Not everyone deserves a second chance." To outsiders, it might seem generic, but you recognize the code because you used to speak that language. You used to hold space for them when they were unraveling, when they couldn't even explain their own feelings. You knew how to hear what they weren't saying. And now, those cryptic words, they hit differently because they're not just talking, they're reaching. They didn't tag you, but every sentence feels aimed right at your soul. It's not confidence. It's not closure. It's the sound of a guilty heart trying to confess without having to kneel. And the irony? No one else sees it. Their friends scroll by, none the wiser. But you feel the pulse behind the poetry because you once knew them in their most honest, unguarded form. And now, that version of them is trying to speak to you again through hints, shadows, silence. That's karma. It doesn't always strike like a storm. Sometimes it lingers like a thought they can't shake, a weight they can't drop, a mind haunted not by what was done to them, but by what they did, by what they let go, by what they broke. A Stoic doesn't respond to subtweets. They don't match energy with more noise. A Stoic knows that validation isn't found in the last word, it's found in stillness. In choosing silence over spectacle, Epictetus said, "If someone speaks ill of you, live in such a way that no one will believe it." And that's the standard now. Let them twist stories, drop breadcrumbs, perform healing like it's a public ritual. You don't chase narratives. You don't rush to defend your side. Because while they're busy trying to prove they've moved on, your silence has already done the one thing they fear most. It's made them wonder. Wonder if you saw their latest post. Wonder if you picked up on that subtle caption. Wonder if you still think of them the way they clearly still think of you. And the more they wonder, the deeper karma does its work. You didn't leave a scar. You left a mirror. And now they see themselves in it every day. Continuing from the haunting silence that lives in their mind, now comes karma's sharpest mirror, the kind that reflects their own shadow back at them. This is the moment when the universe stops whispering and begins teaching. The final and most undeniable sign that someone is silently receiving their karma is when life sends them someone just like them. Not simply a bad match or a wrong fit, but a perfect echo, living, breathing version of who they once were. At first glance, it feels magical. They think they've met their soulmate, someone who finally gets them, someone who lights up their world. The spark is instant, the chemistry intense, the attraction magnetic. But they're not falling for something new. They're falling into a karmic trap, a loop of their own making. This new person doesn't love them, they reflect them. And that mirror begins showing them who they've truly been. They're no longer in control. They're the one waiting for texts that never arrive, checking their phone for calls that don't come, feeling the emptiness of silence where attention once lived. They post for validation and receive indifference. The tables turn swiftly. They once made you feel insecure, as if you were never enough no matter how much love you poured out. Now they find themselves pouring from an empty cup, trying to win over someone who treats their vulnerability like a weapon. They used to mock your softness. Now they share their feelings and are met with sarcasm. They once dismissed your loyalty. Now they're begging for someone to stay, for someone who's already halfway out the door. In the beginning, they make excuses. This person is just complicated. They're misunderstood. But those excuses start to wear thin. And in the stillness after yet another failed attempt at connection, a terrifying realization creeps in. This is exactly what I did to someone else. They may never speak it aloud, but the awareness becomes louder than any confession. It stalks them in the quiet of night, in the heavy breath before sleep, in the hollow pause after reaching out and getting nothing back. And that's not chaos. That's not punishment. That's justice, the kind that doesn't seek vengeance, but understanding. The kind that makes you live the lesson so you'll never forget it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." But the universe doesn't deal in revenge, it restores. Not by hurting them back, but by making them feel the weight of the damage they caused through a person they can't change, can't predict, and certainly can't control. This isn't suffering for the sake of suffering, it's perspective in its most unforgettable form. They thought they had power, but now they're face to face with the one thing they can't escape: reflection. They used to mock how deeply you cared, laughing at the way your emotions ran deep, as if it made you weak. But now, they're wiping tears over someone who couldn't care less if they vanished. They used to belittle your needs, roll their eyes when you expressed them, make you feel like asking for love was asking for too much. And now they're being told the same words by someone who gives affection like it's a reward to be earned but never deserved. They once walked away from you like they were invincible, untouchable, like your presence was disposable. Now they're the ones chasing unanswered messages, clinging to a thread of connection, begging someone to care, to stay, to give them a sliver of what you once offered so freely. But the person on the other side? They simply shrug, with a blank stare and an empty heart. And that's when it hits slowly, deeply, unshakably. They're not just being hurt. They're being mirrored. And the mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't yell. It doesn't judge. It simply reflects exactly who they've been. Every moment they dismissed your love, every time they mocked your vulnerability, is now looking back at them with cold precision. Let them meet their match. Let them feel the confusion of being led on, the emptiness of one-sided effort, the pain of being seen but never truly held. There's no one left to blame this time, no narrative to twist, no villain to point at. Because the one hurting them now isn't a monster, it's them. In a new face, repeating old patterns. That's not vengeance. That's the return. Karma doesn't need to shout or throw punches. It simply hands them the same script they once handed you and lets them live it. So when they sit in the silence and ask, "Why me?" the answer isn't punishment. It's perspective. You don't need to fight people who are already wrestling with themselves. You don't need to match their energy or expose their lies. Karma doesn't require your help to do its work. All it needs from you is your silence, your composure, your refusal to sink. Because while they're still tangled in games, pride, and denial, you've stepped into something they can't touch: clarity. And here's what most people forget. Karma isn't just about what happens to them. It's about what happens to you. When you truly let go, something powerful shifts. You stop waiting for closure because peace becomes your closure. You stop hoping for justice because time becomes your ally. And you stop needing them to understand your pain because life is already teaching them every day. Your role isn't to retaliate, it's to elevate. To become so grounded, so complete, so inwardly solid that no one, not even the ghost of their memory, can shake you. That is the Stoic path. We don't curse our enemies. We don't seek attention. We simply rise quietly and powerfully, with a calm so deep it unsettles those who once underestimated us. So if you've been hurt by someone who never looked back, who moved on like you never mattered, let them. Because even if they look free on the outside, they're carrying the one thing that never sleeps, the truth. And here's the truth. People who lie to others often sleep fine. But people who lie to themselves, they don't sleep at all. They may still wear a mask in public, but deep down, they can't hide from themselves, and that's the loudest kind of reckoning. If you're walking this path of quiet strength and inner clarity, then know this isn't about revenge. It's about rising. At the Stoic Room, we don't just talk about healing, we train the mind to lead instead of react. We sharpen discipline, we build clarity, and we forge a peace so deep it cannot be disturbed. Let karma do its invisible work, while you keep evolving into someone they'll never have access to again. That's not revenge. That's transformation. And when you grow like that, when you rise with silence and strength, the world can't help but notice, even if it says nothing. So subscribe, like this video, and explore our playlist, Stoic Wisdom, Mastering Emotions and Inner Strength. Until next time, stay calm, stay strong, and keep walking the Stoic path.